Well, I have good news. If you don't like M. Night Shyamalan, now you have his daughter directing in her feature full-length debut. The movie is called The Watchers. But is she following her father's footsteps and having crazy twists in her movies? Yep, she definitely is. When 28-year-old artist Mina finds shelter after getting stranded in an expansive, untouched forest in Western Ireland, she unknowingly becomes trapped alongside three strangers that are watched and stalked by mysterious creatures each night. The film stars Dakota Fanning, Georgina Campbell, Olwen Fouéré, Oliver Finnegan, and many more, and was directed by Ishana Night Shyamalan, and this is her directorial debut. The Watchers. Now, I did see a trailer for this film a couple times, and to be honest with you, I didn't really pay attention to the trailer, mainly because if it's a horror film, I'm going to go ahead and check it out regardless at a theater. We follow a character named Mina, who is played by Dakota Fanning. She works at a pet shop, and her boss says, hey, take this exotic bird to an Ireland zoo. So she goes through the countryside, and she's trying to go to this zoo to deliver this bird. On the way, her car breaks down and she has to wander through the woods to find some type of help. She stumbles upon these three strangers that are in this box. They call it a coup, where they are being watched nightly by these creatures 12 hours throughout the night, and she ends up being stuck there with all these different people, and they talk about how they have all these different rules in which they break the rules probably 100 times in this movie. Most of the creatures that is intriguing in this film, because it is intriguing in the fact that you do have these creatures in the woods. I did like the folklore and the structure of the coup and who actually built the coup. That was really cool finding all that out, but most of the creatures throughout this film, they're hidden in the shadows for good reason, because when they actually do appear later on in the film, the CGI, oh my gosh, it's very noticeable and it's pretty bad. Also for the characters too, I feel like a lot of times throughout this film, the stakes are kind of low. We know that during the night, the creatures will sit there and watch them, but I never really felt like they were really threatened too much, other than maybe one scene, but I never really felt like they were going to be killed right away. During the day, our characters, they're wandering around and we see these signs that have a bunch of writing on them. We do see a bunch of what I would say big old holes where apparently these creatures actually live, and we do go a little bit inside there and we see one of the characters actually steal a bike. The characters are also written so dumb as well. For instance, obviously there is one boy there that has been there for 8 months, another girl that has been there for 5 months, and you would think to yourself, well, maybe they might actually try to escape and actually try to attempt to get out of this situation, which they apparently never have, and there's a clever idea to actually escape from the forest, and they seem so shocked to actually do that because they're just kind of in this trance of just doing the same thing day after day. Mina, she is an artist, and throughout this film, she is drawing on the floors in this coop. Now, there's a certain discovery that is made later on in the film that really changes the game of the film when these monsters are actually attacking the coop. And when they actually made that discovery, I was like, are you serious? You've been in this coop for months on end and you never thought that that would actually be there, that secret that is revealed. So it just drove me nuts that that was even included, and these characters just feel like they just weren't that smartly written, and just characters that just didn't really seem to really think outside the box. We really don't learn a lot about them, except for Dakota Fanning's character. We learn a little bit about her tragedy, and they make sure they remind us about 3 or 4 times in this movie. The other characters, though, Georgina Campbell and the other boy, we really don't get much out of them whatsoever. The older lady, she's just there for exposition dump and to actually explain certain things like how the creatures actually got there, and then certain things that really tie into the outside world. Now, one thing that I didn't like about this film also is it felt like there was a lot of times where the film should just end. But of course, we've got to have a twist. And when we get into the twist of this film, it's very fantasy-like. So if you like fantasy and that kind of genre, you're really going to like the third act of this film. It just wasn't needed to me. I felt like those fantasy aspects that they were trying to include, maybe they could have included that more so in the forest when everything was going on down there. I felt like that could have made the movie a little bit more interesting, because those kinds of elements are on the outside world, and I felt like by the time we got to that point, it just didn't really make sense to actually do that. And I wasn't necessarily, I would say, shocked, but at the same time, I'm kind of used to M. Night Shyamalan. Even though this was an M. Night Shyamalan, I believe he did produce it, so obviously I'm sure he had some type of hand in the writing. And I know his daughter actually had some writing skills with Old and a couple of other films that she's worked on as well with M. Night. So I know that they were thinking of some crazy twists to put in here, and of course they actually do. I know it does derive from a book, and I've heard the book is not that good. I'm not really sure if this really follows the book to a T or anything, but I don't know. For me, this just did not work. The film overall, the story overall, I had a little bit of intrigue, but I just felt like after a while, I just had enough of it, and by the time the third act came and they just wrapped it all up, it just was not for me whatsoever. So as far as a score for this film, I would give it a 2 out of 5. A very meh kind of film. I will say, though, that I do think that there's some really good cinematography. I love the forest aspect, and I actually love the sweeping shots of like the landscapes of Ireland. All that's really good. Though I do question the fact that there's a zoo out there in the middle of nowhere towards the forest. Yeah, I didn't really buy that aspect either. There's just little things in here that just really didn't add up all the way for me, and I'm wondering how close this is actually to the book. However, I want to hear from you guys. What did you guys think about this film? Did you like it? Did you hate it? Did you just think it was kind of meh? And if you haven't checked it out yet, are you going to check it out in a theater? Are you going to check it out on streaming? Or are you going to skip it altogether? Thank you guys for watching this review, and I will see you guys next time.